The opinions, viewpoints, and advice shared in this podcast are solely those of the host, Dave McGlynn, and should not be interpreted as reflecting or endorsed by the Department of the Army or the Department of Defense Fire and Emergency Services.
All right. Welcome to another Fire Engineering Podcast, The Training Officer. I am your host, Dave McGlynn. Tonight we are joined by another special guest. I always have special guests, but no, seriously, I have a good guest tonight, a guy that I've communicated with. He had me on his show a while back. I mean, it's like easily 5.5 years ago. And he's out there doing some great stuff. We've stayed in touch. We reconnected recently when I was out in Michigan. We talked about getting him on the show. If you haven't seen any of his stuff on social media, he's the guy that just does all those goofy videos. He did the one recently where he talks about how, what fire truck is synonymous with what type of vehicle. So like Pierce was like Mercedes or something, yeah. And they're all just funny things, and they're great stuff. He's very passionate about the fire service. He likes to find the funk and dysfunctional and have the fun and funny in it. But anyway, so tonight I'm joined by Chris Hagan. So Chris Hagan's 18-year fire service career. He's battalion chief and paramedic in a suburban department right outside the Metro Detroit area. He started out as a paid on-call firefighter and then transitioned to a full-time firefighter a few years ago. He's a union advocate, Milwaukee tool junkie, and a supporter of social media and a girl dad. Girl dad, man, wow, that's tough. I got a daughter also. She's going on 12, but literally going on like 30 with her attitude. So good luck with all that. But thanks for joining me tonight, brother. I appreciate having you. I'm glad we could finally do this on now me interviewing you.
Yeah, this is awesome. Yeah, so Chris Hagan. I'm a battalion chief. If you Google my name, you can find me. But yeah, I'm about a half hour, 45 minutes north of Detroit, and I started in 2007. As a part-time guy. My brother was a volunteer. My older brother was a volunteer. And I went to one ice rescue training that they were doing. And, at that time, I worked in a parking lot. And that was a lot cooler. And so I ended up, it was a thing you don't see, I think, nowadays, at least in Metro Detroit. I went to my agency, and I walked in the door to headquarters, and I sat down with the chief at the time. And these were genuinely the two questions that he had. Do you have your EMT? No. Do you have your fire? No. And now I'm sweating. I guess I walked in here with nothing. And his response was, cool, we will send you to school. And that's all it was. I walked out, and a day or so later, I was enrolled in the fire academy and the EMT academy. And that was it. And looking at the industry now in my area, that's not how it goes. Once you go further north and it gets more rural, probably still the case. But at least from my area, that's a thing of the past. And so I just stuck with it. I did my college degree locally around here in journalism, and started testing for full-time slots. I tested kind of all over the country. This is back when we had hundreds of applicants for like one position. And I was going up against guys that were way more qualified than me. This is post 2008. So departments downsized. The candidate pool is huge. And I kind of found my way back home, just a townie rat, as I call myself. And I was fortunate enough to get a gig here full time, stuck with it, right place, right time. I'm a glutton for education. And so fast forward to 2025, I'm a battalion chief, and we run advanced life support. So we're a transporting agency, and we do medical fire. We rig hop, kind of that same suburban fire department story where we're task saturated and manpower limited.
No, that's awesome. It's funny. The interesting thing that I pulled from there is I never thought of it, and this is ignorant on my part. So I I always say there's firefighters who became firemen before 9/11 and then firemen who became firemen after 9/11. And even though when I first became fireman was '01, I had joined the fire department in July of '01. I don't know if you remember, but you're the only show I ever shared my story with where I had a part of the process, the onboarding process was to climb the top of the stick. And at the time the Twin Towers were there and I remember that. Yeah. Seeing them up in the skyline there. So, I didn't think of that, when we hit the recession and when there was the crash again, that was a hard time for people to get on the job. Yeah. So I didn't even think of that until you just said it. I'm like, yeah, that's true. Like that, that's another piece generationally, where you had loads of people trying to bid for one job because everybody needed a job, I didn't even think of that. That's
when I came really on,
cool you're in that.
Yeah, when I came on, when I was trying to get a full-time gig, right, I tested in Detroit and Grand Rapids. In Detroit, it was a 3-day event, and where they host the auto show. It for me, it will always be Cobo Hall, but it's just a big event center in downtown Detroit. It was 3 days, and it was 1,000 people per day. Grand Rapids was again 3 days, 400 people per day, and I had nothing. I was a dumbass kid with a Fire 1 and 2 and an EMT license. At the time, I was hot shit in my mind, but to everybody else, I'm going up against career guys that have had genuine fire duty, that were medics, that were doing the thing. And it all started with a civil service exam, but then you just got your service credits, and I just didn't have it, right? And so that was, I went Prince George's County, Appleton, Wisconsin. I remember doing a interview tour where I started in Appleton, Wisconsin, and I ended in Prince George's County. And so I must have interviewed like garbage because none of them called me back, except for Knoxville. I did do a couple of stints in Knoxville for interview testing. And then, like I said, my hometown opened up, and they were willing to work with me quite a bit. So it ended up working out well. But yeah, just and it was a wild time too, because when you're in that same time period, that's when I feel the Vicodin and opioid epidemic was really hot, right? So it was this task demand that was needed, but cities, they didn't have any money. I mean, they still plead like they have no money, but at that time they genuinely were kind of cash strapped. So it was and this will probably dovetail into something later, but I'm becoming salty when I see new guys take advantage or become jaded on the stuff that they're entitled to, coming from where I came from, where it was like a dogfight. And right now it's like departments are giving you, they're genuinely giving you money to apply.
That's the one interesting thing is it's people who really want the job. They have stories like that where they've traveled all over, and good on you that it worked out that, here full circle, guess what? You got back to where you grew up and you're out there doing it. And that's awesome. But yeah, that is just, that happens. Unfortunately is a lot of us had to do, like I said, the testing circuit and, and it just is what it is. So we got a lot to cover. So let's dive into it. There's a few things we kind of already hit off the opening part that I usually start with most of my shows with. But what do you call it? So some of the things that you and I had talked about when we were communicating prior to doing the show, and I found this interesting. I said, I'd like to know some of the things you wanted to talk about. So when it comes to probationary firefighters, how do we set the tone early without overwhelming them, but still make sure that they understand the weight of the job?
I'm glad you. So when I was looking into this, right, I remember we hired a couple of new guys on my department, and I had watched new guys come in where the tone wasn't set. And I'm not talking about being an a-hole. I'm just saying that they had no life experience. So they're coming in with whatever they grew up with into the firehouse. And that has caused a ton of friction. But in my opinion, that's not their fault. Our agency really didn't do a great job of giving them a packet and saying, this is what we expect. Not so much show up at 8 a.m. and be on time and be dressed, but the nuanced stuff that I think we take for granted. What is their role when they walk in the door at 7:30 for an 8 o'clock shift and the bell goes off at 8:02? Well, so what I ended up doing is I get a hold of my new guys, their personal email. And from my department email, I sent them an expectations list from me, from my shift. And I say very clearly, this isn't the department. This is my shift. For the department, you have SOPs. You're going to follow those. For here, this is the nuanced stuff that I also want you to follow that, in my opinion, will set you up very well. One of those, and they sound rudimentary or elementary when it's just you and I talking, but at shift change, if there's another probationary member, engage with them. They had a day, they had a shift, something went right, something went wrong. And if you are worried about engaging with the senior guy, with the boss, that's fine. I don't expect that, or I expect that. But I want you to be actively engaged at shift change, because in my mind, that's going to lead to a better fireman down the line, where they're going to have a nice, healthy shift change where they're not just out in the bay stripping their gear off the rig and then going home. They're having a cup of coffee and they're wanting to be here. And there's other stuff on that list about where I want you to, in a riding position, what I want, who I want you to listen to, where to go, what to see. And at the very bottom, I'm going to take my eyes off camera for a second because I want to read it. But I think this is what this industry has lost a little bit of, and I think is coming back. And at the very bottom, I say the last part is not so much an expectation, but a prevailing hope from myself and the battalion you're coming to. I want you to enjoy coming to work. I want you to have fun while you're at work. This job is founded on structure and chain of command. I want you to enjoy your time here. Be professional. Your officers do not ask of you what they themselves haven't done. And that's where I end. And I really, at the end of the day, just I want them to want to show up to work, and I want them to have the tone set from the minute they walk in the door. And then everything else after that, well, we can work on.
Yeah, no, sure. I like that. I like everything. So, the biggest thing there is we're setting a culture, right?
Yeah.
So, when you're trying to get them to not just want to take their gear off the rig and go home, you're preventing this punching the clock mentality. Hanging out, shooting the shit with the guys, drinking coffee, watching the other shifts come on, whatever, watching how they start their day, even if you hung back, another 15 minutes past the time that you got off or whatever. You're creating a culture up front there. So good on you, leadership wise. And then tying into a training thing, like we don't realize like those are little training things too, because we're teaching these people about a culture and what an expectation is. And then we're also teaching them like how to align themselves for success. From day one. So I like that. I think that's pretty smart that you set that up like that.
It's so true with training. When they run a BS fire alarm at 123 Main Street, or let's say that's Main Street. Everyone has a Main Street. 123 Ferguson Street, right? And it's a BS fire alarm. You cleared in 2 minutes and you're gone, right? That doesn't resonate, right? But at coffee time, when that crew says, don't rely on Google Maps because that house doesn't exist anymore. It's a 6,500 square foot McMansion with a bowling alley in the basement. That's what we had. And then, dude, I'm locked in now. What you had me at bowling alley in the basement, right? Like we all have not we all. Most people have McMansions, big homes, right? But at that is now what am I doing today? I don't know, but hey Cap, hey Lou, hey boss man, can we drive by Ferguson Street? Can I get a look at that? And myself, I'm fortunate to my brother he just got promoted to battalion chief on my department as well. And we have this mindset of get out there. I don't want the first time you see something for it to be on fire. So if you see something, yes, get out there. And if your bosses don't do it and I find out about it, well, that's a problem that we're going to have, because I'm not here for complacency. I don't play video games when I'm at work. I'm working at stuff at work. I'm doing physical training. I'm working out, but I'm in the job. And guys love playing video games. It's a method of their camaraderie. Sure, it's just not me. But what I'm here for is to make sure that these guys are as prepared as possible. And if that's the tone I can set right out the rip, then if there's something new being built that I don't see, that my new probationary sees, I want to have that ability for them to come forward. Like, hey, can we go buy that one? I didn't know they were building. I didn't know they were building 19 condos on the lake with a 10-foot gap between the two units. Right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I like that. It's interesting. It's also very smart. I feel like it's setting a culture right up front, which is the kind of, that's the recipe to success when you're trying to invent a culture, is by starting it right up front.
And that's not, and I'm not trying to absolve a probationary without having the responsibility. Part of what I tell them too is, you're the first one up. Your goal is to beat the senior guy to everything. You need to be, I want you every morning, check these 10 things. And it's the 10 things that cause station strife is going to be, they sound petty, but firemen are petty. So it's the dishwasher. It's the monitor battery. The monitor was left on overnight. So it's a battery check on that. For me, This is, to me, what sets the tone good in the morning is if the floor mats in the rig are clean. So that's part of like my this 10 checklist that I give them is floor mats. As dumb as that sounds, for the oncoming shift and you for having some respect in your rig, it just sets a tone off well, kind of like making your bed in the morning.
No, I agree with that. And it's funny, you talk about small things, like what would be perceived as small things, they mean all the world, like that making the bed thing, and then just as we kind of segue over, I would actually say that it's probably best, just in my experience, but I'm going to have you take the floor. It would probably be best with some of those younger, impressionable guys, those newer guys. We're setting that tone. We're making them understand that small things are important, because if they can be married to and be disciplined to handling some of these small routines, then they're going to want to really tackle the big stuff. They're not going to miss anything, right? So like same thing goes for training stuff. We're training people. Sometimes we get these people, they come out of the academy and they think that they either know it all, or we get guys, and this is like always a nice thing when you have new guys in the firehouse, is you get some guys that you get that been there, done that, and things are just mundane. And they don't need to discuss it. They don't need to talk about it. They don't need to train on it. It's not tactical. It's not sexy. Don't get me off the recliner. I don't feel like dealing with this. So I always say, like, one of the best ways to do that is getting them young guys because all of a sudden you get some dudes coming out of the woodwork and they have like a purpose and they want to try to like start like taking some of these kids under their wings. So,
Yeah.
you know, let's be real here. So when we're talking about like teaching some of these mundane things, right? Like, you know, some of the things that you and I discussed earlier.
Yeah.
Things like firefighter decon, social media policies, we're losing people when we got to talk about this stuff, but we have to talk about it. And like just on the previous topic that we're talking about with the probies and the new guys, I'll tell you, like, and I'll let you explain more, but I feel personally your best segue into that is getting those guys to understand some of this stuff and value it, because it almost like re-engages some of the other guys, right? So what I'll say to you is just, we talk about things like that, right? Topics like that.
Yeah.
And
so
what's your trick to making it not boring?
So, the probationary, the new guy at a house with some senior guys, right? And I say senior, we're a young department. So my senior guys can be 7, 8, 9-year guys. I'm not talking like 20-year vets, right? But like they're
still long enough for them to think that they're exempt from
still
doing
long
stuff.
enough, right? And so 2 things happen, right? One, the new probationary comes in, the new guy comes in, and they're jacked, right? They want to do things, and it kind of lights a little bit of a fire, right? Or 2, that fire exposes maybe some training scars on those old guys, and they're not doing it the right way anymore, or they were never doing it the right way, but up here it's locked in. And that comes out on the drill ground when you have guys that haven't thrown a 24-footer in 6 months, but then they get a new guy, and I'm gonna, and I'm a proponent that there is only, for the standard complement, we have a roof ladder, the extension ladder, and the 35. Other departments carry larger. In our area, we don't. Really, the 35 is king in my area. So my belief is the 35, genuinely for safety too, is a 2-person ladder. Everything else is a single man ladder, right? Well, you get some of these senior guys that are like, yeah, I'll show you how to do the 24, and they throw it, and it's an abomination. It's terrible, right? But the best thing is I see it, and then now we're drilling, now we're training. But like you said, that's a sexy topic. I, for some reason, look at it as a challenge to take a boring topic and try to at least make it stick in a manner that they've never been taught before. And I really like firefighter decon and limiting your exposure, because I'll be honest, I know cancer is so prevalent in the fire service. But I'm also going to be real too. That C word comes around when it comes to a seminar or a conference, and I'm just like, yeah, I know, I've heard it before.
Right? Yeah, it starts to get a little convoluted,
and it's important and it's there, but it's just like, yes, I know, take a shower and that's it, right? But
right,
I didn't want that to be what I was going to go for, and so I started digging into some chemicals that are in a structure fire, and I started applying that to stuff that I was interested in, like history, and incorporating that into history. And so what I was able to do, and I just delivered this speech yesterday in Detroit to a bunch of 20-year guys in the city of Detroit, to guys on departments 10 times busier than me, to guys on Lansing Fire Department. And I started breaking down things that exist and see where their minds took them. So one, I showed this picture of World War I, and I asked the whole class, and I'll ask you, Dave, in World War I, what was the big weapon that they used during World War I? Gas.
Oh yeah, I was trying to unmute my mic.
Yeah, gas. So they gassed everybody, right? They mustard gas everything. One of which they used is phosgene. And in 1926, the Geneva Convention said that's illegal. When PVC burns, it releases phosgene. And then I go over and the gas chambers. that the Nazis used. One of the biggest thing they used were these cans, and they look like food cans called Zyklon B, and it's a big skull and crossbones. They would cut the can open, it would off gas, and that's how they killed millions of people. The main ingredient in Zyklon B is hydrogen cyanide, one of the toxic twins that are released into a structure fire. And so when I'm looking at these guys, I go, you're not fighting a fire in a bungalow. You're not fighting a fire in a colonial. You're fighting a fire in a gas chamber. You just happen to have a mask. And man, like, I'm getting chills talking about it, delivering it in that way. But then it really, like, holy shit. Like I was watching the reaction as I was explaining it in that manner. And it's never been explained to me in that. All I've been told is, man, it's bad stuff. Well, how bad is bad? Well, I think gas chamber during the World War II is pretty fucking bad, right? But that's genuinely, and that's not big city. So for anyone like watching, that is your department in rural Oklahoma. That is your department in Sacramento. That is Tallahassee. That is the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. That's your house fire, and that really drives home a different fact, because when I'm looking at a house fire and it's chugging like a freight train, I know I'm going into a cyanide-filled environment, and that's what I'm hoping to push. When you look at electric vehicles, so in my first due, no joke, 400 feet from my firehouse, GM put a $4 billion investment into a plant for electric vehicles. So when electric vehicles burn, they cause hydrogen fluoride. That, when mixed with water, turns into hydrofluoric acid, corrosive, right? And that eats away at your skin. And so I genuinely try to find the best ways to connect into it that make it seem way more real than methyl ethyl bad shit, wear your SCBA and stand up wind, because that doesn't mean anything to guys. It's I think, at least in my opinion, it's stuff like that makes it hit.
No, I agree. I've never heard anybody use the perspective of tying it to Cyclone B.
Yeah.
And as you said it, I'm like, yeah, man, like you're right. And then now, right, you know, however anybody feels on whatever side they want to feel on it. The EV cars, and it's not even just, it doesn't stop there. This, you know, this energy efficient shit.
Good
right,
correction.
It's everywhere.
It's like, that's not EV cars. It's lithium ion batteries. The byproduct of burning lithium ion is hydrogen fluoride. So good right. Catch. 100%.
Yeah, no, but it's everywhere. And the scary thing is that it is in vehicles now. So not only is it everywhere, but it's mobile. You know, and I mean, it's even in our fire trucks now, you know, and we don't, and I'm not picking on anybody, we don't have enough information. And then even if we did have enough information, we don't have enough funding and equipment, because, the frequency isn't there. So why would I want to put money into it? And it's like, yeah, I guess, you know, that's par for the course with anything in the fire service. But
you know, this shows you this shows you also my lack of understanding, lack of knowledge. There's a sexier word for it than I stroked out there for a second. But I've always been told, okay, there's bad shit and smoke in that fire. When you get back to the firehouse, gross decon, throw your gear in the extractor, and take a shower. All right. Well, I take a shower. That's
actually nice that you've even been told that, because we weren't told that.
Yeah.
We used to wash each other off with the hose and the brushes. I'm not making this up. And the brushes that we used to wash the trucks with.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we used to do when we got back from a fire. And then my chief in like 2006, he started to like make us, like, he literally, like, he pulled my gear off the rack because it was still dirty from a fire. He was like, you're not, like, you don't know how to wash your gear, then you don't get to go to fires, you know? And then like, he kind of started that whole, like, put that shit in the extractor. And that was before this whole cancer was like a sexy thing to talk about, you know?
Yeah, when I first came on, it was like it was, it's still. I mean, I'm still a fireman. I still find a salty helmet a point of pride. Maybe I shouldn't, but I do. Okay, the dirty gear that shit does stink. But there is something when you walk into that firehouse and you smell the smoke and they call it a job, like that's still exciting. And I'm not saying leave your shit dirty, but I'm being like real on how real firemen, think. And what I found is if I'm feeling it, a bunch of other guys still think it. But it was, Dave, I had the same experience. It was gross decon, hang your shit up and go home. And I remember being a part-time guy and even a full-time guy, like smelling of smoke. And my brother would call it like, you got some New York on your face, some soot, right? And I would go to bed smelling of smoke when I was a younger man.
Yeah.
And now I have a much different perspective on
that. Higher respect for it. I'm showering sometimes twice after a job.
And even to the showering thing, because I've taken a shower. And listen, also too, there's only one soap of the American Fire Service, and that's Dove 3-in-1 or Suave 3-in-1. If they can do 6-in-1, we'll take it. But just using.
There's a friend of mine. She does. I can't plug her yet. I'm trying to get her to sponsor the show, and then I'll plug her brand. But she has a good. She was out at Sean's thing.
You're leading. Is this Flame? I'll say it.
I can't say anything, but she has a great product. I bought it for all the guys at work, and I make them use it not only after jobs, but like if we do live fire training, like they all use it. They all got a bar for Christmas. We got tubes in the firehouse. Like it's good stuff. I'm not saying it's an everyday thing, but sure, after a job, after live fire, hell yeah, use that.
So I saw the same booth, but again, I didn't give it the time that it needed. And then as I'm researching this to teach it to new guys, it's activated charcoal. And that has been in cosmetics and the medical industry for half a century because it absorbs toxins. And just now we thought about putting it into our soap to remove the toxins on our skin.
Be good on her for pushing it.
Yeah.
Because, people are like, oh, here we go. And it's like, but she's right.
She's 100% right.
Historical data to prove that she's right. Yeah. She didn't invent it. She just said, "Hey, we should use this shit."
1,000%. And then you look at skin, okay? And I started diving into the science of our pores in our skin. And the other part was, and this is not a secret piece of data by any means, but a lot of firefighters don't know it, is our pores open up to let sweat out so we stay cool. But when those pores open, our skin becomes absorbent. So a 5-degree increase in skin temperature makes your skin 400% more absorbent. So if we're going into a fire, and all that, and that's, and I'm on a soapbox right now, but if your gear bellows the smoke up as you're working through a fire, and now your skin's super absorbent because it's hot. You have smoke that's riding up your turnouts. It's on your body. It's now being absorbed. Like you are behind the 8 ball and just using a regular thing you get from. There's only one grocery store in the Midwest. It's Kroger. But you get some whatever soap, Old Spice or whatever. That's not effective. And so I think breaking down the science, especially to our new guys, in a manner that I don't want to say scares them, but puts them in a reality that was never like that for us is, I think, important. I think it should come from the top down on that reality as well.
No, I very much agree with that. And that's the thing is like, the point in that is how do we, and you covered it, just, how do we make some of these things that aren't sexy, right? And it's just that. It's one, we keep talking about it. Two, we recognize that, through empathy, like I hate sitting here and listening to these conversations. How would I want to be told this? How could I make this that I would want to hear it and it would resonate so that others can? And then more importantly is just the repetition of it. Like we got to keep talking about it. I'm not being corny. I never do shows on this, but we're talking about it and I'm good to talk about it. is, I say everything hinges on training. There's somehow, some way you can tie everything back to training. And this is, again, another training teachable moment thing is it's done through education. We constantly find ways to come up with new strategies and new methodologies on how we deliver this content and this information, because it's important information, and we do it so that it's retainable. And it's not just the cancer in our gear or proper decon, but it's also, like you said, it's the lithium ion, the electric vehicles, and the stuff all around us, and the frame of reference you used. When you said about Cyclone B, and then the stuff that melts your skin. Like, I'm just like, wow, like, what a way to frame it, because it makes you appreciate it all that much more.
Yeah, and this is one iota of, I'll just say, a host of boring, and just my belief, overall boring topic. I'm generalizing, but boring topics in the academy, or that we drill on, that I think just have to get reworked for how firefighters learn. And I think firefighters learn in the same way that I was explaining the decon thing, is we need to have a new approach to bringing this stuff up, to show the impact of the seriousness of it. Social media is another one. So social media is interesting because we're kind of told the same thing, or people believe a different thing. We're told, mind your SOPs on social media and don't post dumb shit. Well, firefighters didn't listen to the second one, and they probably don't know the first one. And again, I'm generalizing, but also too, a belief that you have the First Amendment right to free speech, which you do, and that makes you free of persecution, but not discipline.
Right.
And
I'm glad you're saying this. That is a misconception. People always think like, well, I can say what I want, it doesn't affect my job. Well, it can.
Yeah. And so I wanted to dive into this too, because I'm all over social media, and I love social media. I think it's been one of the best. I'm an advocate for it. I think it has spawned a level of communication that is unmatched. But we also have to understand where our rights are and where your rights lie, so you understand kind of the gravity that you're dealing with. And so when I was looking into social media in 2020 and 2021, when race relations were peaked, you had firefighters that were getting terminated for disparaging their department for nothing and losing their job, and then some real pieces of garbage saying some real racist stuff, and they kept their job. And I'm like, and you can go in a tinfoil hat theory into why that happened, but I wanted to find out more, right? And so I did, and really, it's complicated, and this will probably help no one, but hopefully it sets you at least on a better path, because my rudder was broken in boat terms, right? So with social media, you do have a right to free speech, sort of, and government employees can be restricted. But there's three things that come of it, and it's called a Pickering-Connick test. Pickering-Connick test. And your statement is weighted against three things. One, that it was a public interest. Did what you say matter more to public interest than really the information that you gave? Were you off duty, acting as a private citizen? And was your post engaging in matters of public concern, a great public concern? So back to those two examples that I used, you calling your chief a dumb fill in the blank, even though you're off duty, didn't match the other two, you can be subject to discipline. The other, this is what others have found with litigation, is if you say some crazy stuff about race relations, depending, and this is a kind of a tougher area to navigate, but if it deals with a major area like race relations, community health, or public safety, hydrants are a good one. If I went on social media, and this is not legal advice, by the way, don't take it as such, but if I went on social media and I talked about the safety of the fire hydrants if they're out of service, and I'm disciplined for it, there's a stronger chance that I have, because it works for a greater public good, the greater public interest. But if it doesn't pass this test, and those are kind of rudimentary examples, but the point is, if it doesn't match that test on social media, you can get disciplined. You will get disciplined, and it's probably going to hold up. And the bad news is the courts don't agree on any of this. So your SOP could be restrictive of your First Amendment, but not so restrictive that you can say whatever you want. So at the end of the day, just don't post dumb shit. But I think I'm going to wrap this all up to say, I think social media and our new generation, and even our current guys, need a stronger understanding of the detriment that could come of their posts.
No, I agree, and I think that making them aware of that is important. It's we're not trying to make it like a no fun zone, but I want to try to protect the interests of my people. If I hired a guy that's a pretty good guy,
yeah,
sure, you're entitled to your opinion, but I want to protect you from incriminating yourself when you're loosely sharing your opinion on the internet. I got one of my guys, and he's like sometimes my number 2 guy. And he shares crazy stuff, and it's funny. But like I do, like I vet it in that aspect where like, I'm like, well, is this something that can hem him up, or is it just humor? And I'll tell him, like, I'm like, hey, that one needs to come down. And it's to the point now where he doesn't even try to, he used to try to justify it. Like he would try to, well, blah, 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 and I'm just like, yeah, so anyway, it comes down. Like I wasn't asking you, I was telling you, I said it with a period, not a question mark. And he's like, all right, I got it, but it's the truth, like we do, even just me, man, like when I did my first book, I was under an ethics, violation investigation. I was accused of using my official title, for personal gain. And I made it through that, because I was just spreading a good word. I just happened to also work where I worked. Like, but that's as like, if somebody wants to, they'll try to connect the dots. I feel like I've worked for the government long enough that I've been very cautious. Like even in this podcast, there's a disclaimer that starts up front, and it says that the views and opinions are mine and not of the armies or the DOD. When we did the show with you 5.5 years ago, you had asked me, you said, am I allowed to say where you work now? Because, it was right after I had transitioned from West Point to a different department, and it's just, you just got to be safe. I'm very much on the public sector, and I try to be very safe and cautious of maintaining that balance. Does it suck? Yeah, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I think it's stupid. Especially with me, like I'm trying to like spread, information. I got tactics that I could do a quick drill and record it in the firehouse on my phone, and I could touch thousands of lives in 15 minutes of posting it on the internet. I can't because of where I work, but I found a way to navigate through it. So you can too, is the point. Like I'm not bragging when I say it's like I'm a public figure, and I have maintained the protected identity of where I work while maintaining being a public figure. So if I can do it, you can do it,
And I can't echo that enough. And I think, the examples I used were on the larger scale that's going to get litigated, right? But on the smaller scale, that happens probably way more frequently than those larger ones I used, was you just take a selfie in the firehouse while on duty, and that's your profile picture. Well, by definition, you violated it potentially, okay? Because you're posting. Did you post it while you're on duty, or are you in the middle of doing something? Like I use this other example. You posted a video of yourself smoking a cigar at the firehouse. There's nothing, you're above 18, you can have a cigar, but you're in uniform in a public building that has a no tobacco policy. They have you dead to rights, and they should, but this is kind of that conversation that for our new guys, when we train them up to make them I've talked about it before, but we have operationally professional and administratively professional. And this is how we make them administratively professional, because the administrative part, not as important when it comes to the job for firemen, for probies, but for professionalism, it's very important.
Yeah, no, amen. I'm totally with you there. So, as we continue on, we're just talking about a lot of different things and sticking to, the importance of training some folks, and even on like what would be perceived as stigmatic or taboo or not sexy enough stuff. Right. So we train our people to crawl down hallways. But we're not doing enough to make them industry professionals outside of fireground tasks. I've been actually finding myself talking about this a lot lately is we're so focused on tactics, and I love tactics. And I never thought I would ever say this in my life, because I always thought tactics was the most important, but I'm recognizing now just like there's a lot more to it than that. And unless you're in a really busy city, the tactics piece of it is really only 20% of what we do. There's a whole other 80% of the firehouse life, and we're missing it. So, how do you use tools like Word, Excel, PowerPoint in your training prep to prepare them for a bigger picture, right? So that they understand that there's more to it than just tactics. There's more to cognitive retention, understanding, lecture, being articulate. There's just so much more to it. So, in your suggestion, how would you use those types of tools and still make it sexy and people still have a level of buy-in?
When I promoted and now I drive a staff car, like a pickup truck. I make the joke. I traded a Halligan for an Expo marker, and I hate it. Right? Like I at open house time, I always ask for the same role. I'm the forcible entry guy. I want to be on the forcible entry door, and I want to teach kids coming up the Halligan, and I love that. I love stretches. I spent 15 years trying to get smoothbore nozzles on my department, and this year we finally got them. And it's been, and it might sound dumb to some, but this was a big fight for me for a long time in my career. And then I promote, and now I don't touch it. But I was recognizing that the other stuff was lacking. And why that's important is, yeah, throwing a ladder is important, but how you reply to a chief, a member of the county med control, what your run reports are like, that matters. And if you are QA or QI'd on a run report and you have a paragraph this long in one sentence, that's a problem. And not to say that the fire department or the academy is going to correct a school problem or your development in grammar. It might have to take on some of that responsibility, or at least accept it. And I've put on training before, and I'm going to put on training in the future, where all of our guys bring in their laptop, and what we are going to do is just going to go over a trick list for Microsoft Word, building PowerPoints. So when you become an instructor, and I've done this before, one of my favorite drills on training is I will assign a line of duty death report, a NIOSH report, to every one of my guys. And then I let my guys decide what NIOSH report they want to give me. And then I give everybody a month. And then we all give a PowerPoint presentation. And then we have like presentation day. And then every one of the guys will build a PowerPoint on that NIOSH report. I'm not 10, 15 minutes, but it covers, one, the lessons that were taken from that. It covers, like I said, lessons learned, the incident itself, but it also forces them to build a PowerPoint and build something that is going to have a bigger impact on them. I don't know, if nothing else, when their daughter has to ask help for making a presentation in school, you're not suddenly a deer in headlights. You know something. And that's, I think, one of the most fun trainings that I enjoy doing for when it's -5 outside, or is that sexy? No, but is that professional development? Goddamn right it is.
But it can be sexy too, though, because the way I like to say it to people is like when people try to say, "Well, that's not my thing," I'm like, "Well, I'm not trying to dangle a carrot." But not only that, but I'm not trying to dangle a carrot. But like, if you want to promote, you better know how to write reports. And you also, when you promote, whether you're a training officer or not, you develop your people. That's part of your job. I've been all over in the fire service. I've been in multiple different departments in multiple different states, and I can tell you that, from the early lieutenant on up, everybody trains somebody, even firemen. But I'm saying, like, when you promote, it is your responsibility. So you better know how to do lesson plans. You better know how to do a PowerPoint. You better know how to teach and conduct yourself in a room. And you better know how to do reports and stuff like that. And I say to people, like, it is sexy because it separates you from everybody else. And I don't mean that like condescendingly. It's just, now I'm a selecting official. So I'm looking for somebody to promote.
Yeah.
And if I see a guy that is strong, not just in tactics or talking on the radio, but is strong in developing course content so he can develop his people, that dude's getting promoted one day. You know what I mean? It's just that easy.
And it gives a level of confidence in your staff, because you can look at any guy, maybe a guy looking to promote, 2-year guy, 3-year guy, whatever it is, and you see something in him. There is a great feeling when you go, "Hey, Joe, I know you really enjoy medical. Do you think you could do a presentation?"
That's a bad example. Nobody enjoys medical, so yeah. But anyway,
listen, 80%. Listen, 80% of my life. Okay,
I'm kidding.
Okay,
no, continue on. I'm sorry. I just figured I'd throw a joke in there.
All right. You know what? Fine. But Joe, listen.
Right.
Everyone loves stretches. Okay?
There you go.
All right. I want you to break down the stretch of a 2.5 versus the 1 3/4 and the bundles that we use. And man, to be able to hear, no problem. And by the next rotation, it's done. That's confidence. And that is in my mind this missing link in our profession is we have that dirty M word I just used, and then that fireside. But when you are called before med control or anything else because of a report you wrote, and they're trying to ask you, why did you say the word raped? No, I didn't say that. I wrote wrapped. No, in your report, it's spelled RAPED. Well, I meant to write wrapped. That's not what you wrote. And guess what? Between those two words, Microsoft Word is not going to give you the red squiggly because they're both spelled right. And that's why it's important, is because those two words matter when you're being deposed on the stand. And I'm not trying to scare anybody, but that's true. That's a true. If I was an attorney and I'm reading that in a run report,
right, we're subject matter experts. They're going to call us and they're going to ask us these questions. You're right.
But that is exactly why we need to spend more time administratively. And this isn't like, you don't have to be an expert. This is going on Google. This is going on YouTube and genuinely searching top 10 hacks on PowerPoint, top 20 hacks on PowerPoint, Chat GPT, the same thing. And it will populate this for you. You mimic it, and then you teach it to your staff.
Yeah.
It is just a new way to think about how to train your people to be a better professional.
To understand that it's important
trade.
also. It should be, it needs to be just as sexy as tactics. Like I say that, I love tactics just as much as an S guy, but if we're only focused on drilling a really good drill once a month, then the rest of the month we didn't really do anything or have any type of development. Everybody, needs to have all hands in on pushing content, developing content, writing reports. I just think it's a very important tool. It's good on you that, as a young officer, you're making that important. You value that. You see that, we have a little bit of a problem here, and you're trying to create a culture where people understand that, that's important. And I'm positive that it doesn't go without any headache on that you get.
Yeah. For the moment,
but it doesn't mean you stop.
Yeah, we're not stopping. I mean, they'll do it, but when you open the drill log in the morning, and you see, hey, we have to meet at station 2 for PowerPoint. Like it's like, oh, great. But if I'm coming in hot with this topic, if I'm walking in the door excited on this topic, then you're gonna come along for my ride. You might hate it, and that's okay. But I'm gonna be passionate about it because as nerdy as I'm gonna feel, it's gonna feel even better when your reports get faster, when you get better, when I see
you get better at your job. I mean, honestly, you truly do. You even do get better tactically because when you start developing content, you start to see and appreciate the science and education behind.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Just the muscle memory piece of it, we get caught up with lift things up, put them down. And it's but when you develop the content on how to lift things up, put them down, you start to actually appreciate it all that much more. It actually makes you a better firefighter and better leader anyway. It's not just hey, pick this glass up and move it here. It's well, why are we moving the glass? Here's why. And what's this glass made of? What's an easier way to approach this? What should I also be on the lookout for when I'm moving it? You don't learn that shit unless you're developing the content. When you're doing drills, you're just saying to guys, all right, get the adz end in here, right? Now just go like this. What'd that do for you? Well, it opened the door. There you go. Well, yeah, but why?
Yeah. And that why doesn't stop there. And I'm a suburban. I work in a suburban agency. 80% of what we do are medical, and we're a transporting agency. So you will never see me. I love this job, and I feel like I get educated on this job every day. But you'll never see me stand up and get all puffy chested that I know everything about truck work. Yeah. We have mid rises and we have residentials. I don't know what a high rise fire is. I've never had one. And I haven't had enough fire duty in my career to say I'm solid at the engine. However, if I want to make a really good water can class, I have zero problems calling busier agencies and asking if maybe one of their training officers or their top cat can teach my suburban guys what's the best way to run a can in a search. And I'm fortunate to have Detroit 45 minutes away. They have been phenomenal with the ability to. They just told us today, to be able to use their resources and contact their training division. And I'm gonna go into that. But if everyone know me, I'm not gonna. I might be educated on a water can, but I'm not educated enough to be able to tell you the best search technique with a water can and a hook to get through this door, right? But I'm going to call people that do. And that's where some of our officer ego has to get out the window. And
we got to be on the network. We got to tap into our resources. We don't know what we don't know.
And just like this podcast, and just like everybody you meet at a conference, Sean teaches the searchable versus survivable search class. The guy's 90 minutes from my department, and we're not utilizing that. Right. That's where I hope to get better, but as a training officer or as someone that's involved in training, we all have egos, and do you know how great it would make somebody else feel to reach out to them? Like, hey, can you teach a bunch of guys that don't know as much as you do?
Yeah, it's a high honor when somebody
It
sees
is.
you're passionate
Yeah.
about and wants you to pass it on to them.
Yeah, and approach it in that way. I've been impressed with your career. You guys have a fire duty way bigger than ours. Would you and phrase it like this? And I don't know if we're running over time, but phrase it like this: would you be opposed? And if they say no, that means you got a yes.
Right.
Yeah.
No, you're right, man. No, you're absolutely right. All right. So we're coming toward the end. One of the questions that I ask for everybody is and I give a background because years back it was accused of oh well that's kind of an arrogant question. Other people they write that for you, and I thought, well, that's not what the intent of the question is, though.
Okay.
So we covered a lot of stuff, and I appreciate your time with that. But I always end every show with this because from the training perspective, so I use this this lead up to it. Everything has objectives, right? When you're building a training plan, or if you're putting together a lesson plan, there's objectives, and objectives are desired outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
So while it's true, someone else writes our legacy, you would be a fool to not think that you contribute very much to what is written about you in your legacy. So we all do something. We all have personal objectives, and it's not narcissism and it's not arrogance. It's purpose. Okay. And one of the things that we failed in past generations, the Gen Xers are getting better at it. I'm kind of a Gen Xer, but the millennials are doing really good. And then hopefully these Gen Zers, because they're a little nutty, they are, but hopefully they're going to buy into continuing it on. But the baby boomers, they maybe didn't, and it's not a knock at them. It's just, they were told, thou shalt just do this, just grab this thing, go do that. I know you're upset, but just drink a whiskey and your feelings will go away. And, and no, like we have to have a purpose. All right. It's not, everybody needs a participation medal. No, everyone psychologically needs a purpose because it's a drive. It makes you have some level of recognition that what you're doing matters. And it keeps you, continuing to move forward. And it also allows you to readjust because it exposes what you might be doing wrong and what you need to learn better. Right. So that said, every one of us should have some kind of a hope of what our legacy will be. It's something that we work towards, something that we both have as a personal and professional set of objectives. So I ask you, what would you like your legacy to be?
So if I can walk away, or these firefighters walk away to a different agency, or they retire, or they are reminiscing about the bosses they've had, right? I want my legacy to be that if I'm being, brought up, is he made me feel like I belonged, and he made me feel that I could do it. Maybe in that evolutions, they didn't do it, but I want guys to know that you belong in this spot where I'm standing. You belong at the front door with the hose line charged, and we're going to make the push. And I want you to know that you can do it. And when we're on the drill ground and we're training, I'm not looking for the guy trying to disappear to go take his third piss within 10 minutes. I want to make you feel as though you belong on that drill ground and that you can do it. And the most valuable thing I can give you is my time. And if it's 90 degrees and we're training, I am out there. If I'm hearing ladders banging, one, I'm proud. Two, I'm out there with you. It's like my catnip. If you're banging ladders outside and it's icy, if it's snowing, you want to see me go from 6 to midnight, start throwing ladders when we have 8 inches of snow on the ground at the firehouse, because at least I know that you are drilling on something real. And so that's kind of where if I get to that, I'll be happy.
I like it. Like I said, I always like asking that question. I keep it in for years now in the podcast because it's always fun to watch you guys squirm when the question's asked. But nobody has ever said anything that I would even perceive or try to allude to being arrogant. Like,
Sure.
They're all selfless. Like, it's like, I just want people to feel like I tried. Like this, it's like people say stuff like that all the time. And I love it because there's humility there, but it also means like there's very few of us. There's so many people in the fire service. And I believe that a lot of people do it for the same reason or right reason. That said, not everybody has the legacy where they're content in knowing that people just thought that you tried to make somebody better. Not like, oh, I want people to, retire as the chief because of me. Like, nobody said something like that yet ever, because I would never interview somebody like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, like, it's just, I love the answer. It was a great answer. None have ever been better than another. They're all good. And I appreciate you being vulnerable enough to put yourself out there and say that. But I also appreciate just, it's a new perspective for the show on some of the topics that we talked about, just to kind of like tie it all together. Is just, we talked about, setting those standards for the probie and what that looks like, and then coupling that into tapping into our younger people and making non-sexy things sexy, and then training on the things that aren't just tactics. These were really good topics because I don't always talk about them, so with every new guest comes new perspective. So I do, man, Chris, I appreciate it because it was really good stuff. It's just, I think you're doing great stuff. I'm glad that we had you on and that you gave a whole new perspective of things that, we should continue to talk about, like not just in the fire service, but training people in the fire service, developing people. So last thing before we wrap it up is there anything that you want to plug about yourself, where people can find you, check out your reels and your stories that are hilarious?
So for Instagram and TikTok, it's just Firefighter Run Club. I don't do anything with Run Club. It just sounded better than my last one. I'll probably rebrand again, but Firefighter Run Club. Before I get attacked in comments, which I always do, I know it's goofy. That's not lost on me, but one of my favorite things.
There's dumber names out there. Don't let the haters hate.
But also too, it's satire. It's fun.
Right.
This industry is funny because I started doing those kind of videos because I realized nobody was doing it back against the fire service. We got a lot of keyboard warriors and they come for me, but it's also just super fun to look at the intricacies of our job that only you, me, and people in our industry know about. Like nobody outside of us would really give a rip about a Halligan and how that would compare to an energy drink, but we get it, right? Like we can make those comparisons, and it's just fun. It's just, I don't rip on any one person. I might rip on some brands, but it's just all in good fun. Just comedy.
It's hilarious, man. I think it's awesome. I love that you're doing it. Keep doing it. Who cares about what anybody else has to say? We got to get you to do a couple articles for Fire Engineering and Firefighter Nation.
I love it.
We'll talk and we'll get you to put some stuff together, because especially your take on the cancer thing. I like that comparison. I think that there's something there, and we'll talk more about it. But yeah, I do appreciate your time, bro. Just keep doing what you're doing. We'll be in touch, obviously. But thank you, man. Thank you for your time. Thanks for the perspective. It was really interesting. It was a new take, and it mattered. So I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Dave, I had a ton of fun, man. It's always good to connect with you. And when you're in Michigan, we'll get a beer.
Yeah. I'll be back in June. I got the confirmation yesterday, so for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, this has been Dave McGlynn with Fire Engineering Podcast, Training Officer. Thank you all. Be safe.